years ago, 7.5 years ago, and they're about 300, or 350 now in the UK. And one of the things that we realized when we had 20 people is we didn't have all the answers, obviously, but we had very little experience. So we had to, of course, we used data and various other things, but we had to use intuition. We had to be scared not to fail, but we just had to learn as we went along. And that's really kind of helped us, that learning. But yes, what happened was there was an incident which kind of really not just, I think, defined us, but showed us what I suppose what we were all about, is that when we were very, very young, in 2013, so in the UK we launched basically end of 2011, 2012 as an office. We had a woman who worked in our marketing team that very sadly contracted cancer. And from diagnosis, she died sadly, and from diagnosis to death, it was about 4 or 5 weeks. And she was very young, it was one of those horrible, inexplicable things. And we were a very new team, young team. Everyone knew each other. We all worked in a very little room. So it was almost claustrophobic, but it was very scrappy, and it really helped us. Anyway, what happened is that a lot of the team were young. They'd never experienced death before. We wanted to do something to help when she was in her hospice, but you can't send chocolates because sugar is awful for cancer. You can't send flowers because pollen can often not be great. And someone in the team said, well, why don't we knit her a blanket out of nowhere? And he just said that, and no one knew how to knit, by the way. So we learned via YouTube, guesswork. People took it home, and we did it, and we knitted a blanket, and we sent it. And for obvious reasons, this woman wasn't on her mobile, so we couldn't really contact her, but she tweeted a picture of herself and the blanket, loving it, loving it, lovely. It was a lovely tweet, and she used the hashtag love where you work. And actually that hashtag, that's the first time I believe was used in that context, but it's been embraced by our whole company across the world, and it's in every office up on the wall. Now, it's not because we're trying to seem kind of holier than thou and various other things. It's just, it kind of said to us that if you love what you do, love who you work with, you're probably going to have a better time in the 70% of your life that you're working, or whatever it is. So, and that really helped us. It also taught us that we didn't have a precedent. We didn't know what we were doing there, but we just tried to do the right thing, what we thought to be the right thing, and learn from that. And I think that translates to now as well. Obviously, there are more precedents now. We can see so if we talk about mental health here, we can see what other people are doing and learn. We can see what other people and learn, but there's also trying to work out what's right for us as well. And I suppose that's what we mean by that.
And this has really been, I think you can't help but be touched by that story, but I think it's really created something for you at Twitter. So in terms of mental health, and I know you said you've had conversations with colleagues in other organizations, why have you not chosen that route of sort of training lots of mental health first aiders, for example?
Yeah, it's not that we've abandoned anything or abandoned that route. It's that sometimes we don't have the glut of resources some of our competitors do. So we will sometimes work with third parties and various other things, and actually what we try to do is make decisions quickly, so we can take action quite quickly. So it's not that setting up a whole office-wide mental health system with buddies and allies and putting that training in can take a long time to do it properly. Also, we have, we did have a team that traveled around quite a bit, so are they going to be on site when they're required? I suppose for us, we wanted to do something that works for us and our employees, that we can honor and we can see through. And if we tweak it, if we change it, if we abandon it, if we start again, totally cool.
Yeah.
But we just wanted to, do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. So, okay. So how do you know your staff are okay?
Yeah. Okay. So we do some stuff that pretty much everyone does. So like internal satisfaction, surveys twice a year. We've just done one on COVID, specifically on COVID, working from home, which we can touch upon later. But I think that, and that's a good gauge. That's a gauge. We get very high completion rates on that. And the questions are very much aimed at the employee rather than, or the employee's opinion rather than, an honest opinion, rather than something, what the company wants to achieve, for example. It's about, are we communicating things properly, but how do you feel? What do you struggle with? It can be anonymized, and I think that's always a good indication. That's done on a global, local, and departmental level. But on top of that, we have, we just have regular check-ins with our staff. We've always encouraged just showing, personally, one of the things I realized early doors, and I think children help me with this, having children, it's if someone makes a mistake and they own up to it, it's very hard to be angry with them because they've taken ownership, they're trying to do something. That's why I suppose when children are holding a paintbrush with some paint on the wall behind them and they deny it was them, then you can get angry, right? But if they go, oh yeah, sorry, you're very difficult to stay angry. And I think taking ownership, responsibility, and the next step, showing your vulnerability, asking for help, for example, whether that be, can you help me with this work thing, or I don't feel right, can I do this? Asking for help, I think, is a real sign of strength, not weakness. Because, especially in a team environment, well, I'm going to say especially in a team environment, it's hard to ask for help if there is no one else. But what I mean is asking for help is a real strength. We've really tried to push that from day one. And I think that we understand, because I think that our staff seem, certainly versus other places I've worked, very open in communicating their issues. And I think that helps us take the temperature of the office, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wonder if also that is because, you set up here in the UK, very small, and relatively recently, not like maybe, very big buildings here, perhaps in London, with thousands of people in. In fact, it would be good to know, some people might not just know sort of how many people work in the UK office. So what's the makeup of your employee base here?
Yeah. So it's about, at last count, a little over 300.
Right. People might expect that to be a lot more, actually.
Yeah, so I think we're about 4,500 globally or so. But yeah, a little over 300. And yeah, so I think that's made up of a lot. What's brilliant about it is there are about 30 or so offices globally for Twitter.
Right.
But we're one of a small handful that are multidisciplined. Usually they're just sales or just engineering product. But this is, London is sales, engineering product, policy, legal, marketing, the job lot. It's really nice.
Okay, great.
And the makeup is, about, I suppose 40 or so sales related, 40% or so sales related, 40% or so engineering product related, and then 20% or so everything else.
Okay, great. So there's lots of really lovely questions coming through, but there's a couple of other things that I really want to talk to you about first of all. I have to mention, obviously, the news that hit the headline recently that Twitter employees are now all going to work from home. So obviously there must be more behind that headline. So it'd be just really interesting to hear from you about how this has or has not really come about. What's the truth behind it all?
I haven't seen this. Could you send it to me and then I'll get you? No, it's not. It's not that Twitter employees are all going to work from home. It's that Twitter employees have the flexibility to do so. And I think that just to make it clear, we've always encouraged, well, you know, we've encouraged flexible working for a long, long time, not just since this headline. I suppose that one of the things that's come about is what we've realized through a very sad situation of a global pandemic where everyone was forced to work from home. And in fact, I think we moved quicker than a lot of other companies to go pretty much 100% from home. Is that we realized we can all be quite productive. Communication works. You know, you're not necessarily commuting, you know, so it's not, but at the same time, you know, so what the headline means is it's not you're all working from home forever. I think it's just giving people choice. And I think that you know, you mentioned, I think, you know, we're very much the product of the generations before us, aren't we? You know, so when I started working 350 million years ago, you know, you couldn't do your work unless you were in the office. There was no mobile internet. You know, you had internet at home, but it was narrow band. There's no real VPNs. Everything was on a desktop on your desk in the office. And as time has gone on, you know, with the introduction of Blackberries and iPhones and better laptops and better Wi-Fi and faster Wi-Fi and better apps and better video conferencing units and all this, people have been able to do more remotely. But still, your muscle memory is to go to the office and every so often maybe work from home. I think what this has done is it's shown that you can be hugely productive at home. Yeah. But so what this does is give people the choice. But, you know, I have to say there's a big thing about human interaction for me. You know, a lot of the teams I work with, they say, oh, we might work a bit more from home, but we still like being in the office. We still like seeing our clients face to face. We still like the creativity of having brainstorms in a room or being together or actually fun. That's a big thing. You know, someone saying something and everyone laughing, that builds a culture. And I think, yes. So I think what the headline, so I don't know, I know what the message is around is that we encourage flexible working essentially, and what suits you.
Great. And actually, I'm just going to come to one of the questions that somebody has asked because it's linked to what we're talking about. So somebody has said, organizational psychology stresses that online video conferencing tools impose additional stressful emotional labor on employees as they concentrate on their own on-screen reactions and those of colleagues. What's your view on this? How are you interacting with your colleagues or colleagues interacting with each other?
Yeah, I think as time goes on, you get a bit more used to it. So I totally understand that point, but I reckon, you know, one of the things when this all kicked off and everyone was at home, you know, we would be on a call, there might be a small, and someone's child would run into the room and start shouting or grabbing their parent or whatever. And the parent would be mortified, but everyone else on the call didn't care. In fact, they thought it was funny, probably, you know. And actually, once you get used to that, once you get used to this, actually, I'm finding with my children who have to do homeschooling, obviously, as everyone else's kid, they would say, oh, no, I can't believe it. I was on mute and people couldn't hear me. Then I unmuted after 10 seconds. And I said, just so you know, that happens on every call I'm on, ever. So this is normal. And I think once it's normalized, that stress or that anxiety does go. I think some of the things we try to do in the UK when this kicked off is we've said, you know, I've said, for example, there shouldn't really be a meeting, internal meetings longer than half an hour. Because if you are having to homeschool, if you are having your children running around or whatever, you might find that very stressful being locked onto a call for a long period of time and you've got something else on your mind. So we've done that. We've also said if things are kicking off at home, feel free if an internal meeting not to turn up, just pay the courtesy to the host to say, I can't make it for these reasons. And I think that helps people knowing they have the permission to kind of be autonomous and doing all those kind of things. So yeah, I think when it gets normalized, it gets a bit easier.
Okay, no, really useful. Okay, so let's sort of just go to the nitty gritty that quite a few people have asked in advance about some social media platforms have had and do get criticism for impacting mental health, on poor mental health. So yeah. What's your stance on this, and what can we do to make social media platforms positive roles in tackling stigma for mental health?
Yes, I think that's a very, it's a very good point. I think, as with all these things that are unprecedented, you learn as you kind of go on. I think that we always encourage people to take a break from their screens, and Twitter as a whole. What we're trying to do is build the tools for the health of the platform, and what we mean by that is we've developed tools that will proactively take down abusive tweets, for example. So in the past, you'd have to report that, so if Zoe sees a tweet that she finds abusive, she reports it, Twitter look at it and decide whether it violates, our terms. Now, far more of those tweets are done, don't have to be reported on. They're picked up by our systems and acted upon automatically. So that takes the onus off the user or the consumer to have to do something. And I just want to stress that our number one priority is health on our platform, trying to create a healthy public conversation. So we've done various other things. Obviously, you can mute, block, and report people. We have, if people try to remain anonymous, they're often hidden in the replies. If they just got their, what is now a man but was an egg logo, if they don't give us certain kind of information like phone numbers or even, they're seen to be not as kind of respectful as someone who does share their phone number. So we try to do that. Also, we say that, look, if someone's saying something that you don't like, please mute them, please block them, please report them. You don't have to see you have tools in your arsenal to prevent you seeing that kind of stuff. And also, look, when a lot of our stuff is a breaking news service. We've created other tools where, like, lists and topics where you can follow stuff that you're interested in. But a lot of that stuff is really fun stuff. I'm interested in sport. I'm interested in kind of funny stuff on Twitter and stuff that breaks all the time there. So yeah, it's our number one priority and has been for about 4 or 5 years now. And the progress we're seeing on number of reports go down, suspensions going up, action we're taking is all going the right way.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so a question, lots of questions coming in now. So somebody said, I see Twitter has for the first time today tagged one of Trump's tweets as misleading and unsubstantiated. Has the amount of misinformation gone up since the pandemic, and what impact does this have on people's mental health?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one in terms of misinformation. We're doing our utmost to try to keep misinformation as low as possible. And we have specific policy for COVID where we monitor it very tightly. What I don't have are numbers, because obviously this specific period of time has been about since lockdown in the UK, for example, is about 8 to 10 weeks or whatever. So it's a very close period of time to see if misinformation has gone up. All I will say is we take it incredibly seriously and act upon it. Obviously, sometimes people give opinions, which is, freedom of speech, but as we take it very, very, very seriously. And again, if you see stuff that you believe to be misinformation, please, there's a button next to the tweet. Please do report it because it gets looked at as a priority.
Okay, great. Thank you. So somebody has written in and said, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, right, yeah. What advice would I give my younger self? Okay, so I suppose career-wise, one of the first job I was in, I was there for 6 years and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I left probably 2 years too late because I was worried that if I went somewhere else, I'd be found out, like, or I'd, you know, I wouldn't be as good as I was in my first job. I'd have to start again. And actually, to have that confidence to move when you stop learning, for myself, that would be it. But I suppose that had I not waited 6 years, I probably wouldn't have learned that, if you see what I mean. So, but that's advice I'd give myself. And I suppose one of the mantras that's really helped me is don't worry, if you work with brilliant people, that's a strength, not a threat. And I think that in life, we all know this. You're going to be better at me than at certain things, Zoe, and I'm going to be better than you at certain things. That's just a matter of life, and you shouldn't be worried about that. And I think work with people who are amazing, but just be the best version of yourself you can be. And I think if you realize that early on, it gets rid of a lot of the anxiety and unnecessary competitivity you often find in the workplace, I think.
Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so this is more questions coming in, so they're a bit sort of changing subjects.
Yeah,
technology can be so impersonal. How can kindness be demonstrated whilst working remotely?
I think that's a brilliant question. Yeah, I think, as I said before, technology is fantastic and can help smooth the edges of, it makes stuff so much easier and quicker, but often face-to-face is hard to replace, and human interaction is hard to replace. However, there's little things that can be done that have been really nice. For example, people in this I know have sent each other gifts in my team. If they've worked closely and they've sent each other a little gift, done technologically, funnily enough, but it's really helped that, helped people get through what can be a hard time. I think just being ultra communicative is really good. I think what it's interesting that what one of my daughters is finding is, because she's doing her homeschooling, and a lot of it's on obviously camera, but also on messaging via the teachers. She said the teachers are being far more positive and praising the children more than they might do in a classroom. And I think that's a real learning, isn't it? So I think if you're remote, you might have more anxiety. You might be thinking, what does that person think? You might think that person might be angry or upset. If you were in the same room as them, you could look at them and see that they weren't angry or upset, right?
Yeah.
So I think just making sure you're as clear as possible, following up with people, messaging them separately. I think all those little things. And again, when it comes to working in teams, knowing that people have the freedom to be adults and run their lives as they can, rather than being very draconian and authoritarian, so I think just having that, bits and bobs of kindness like that can be easy and helpful.
Yeah, great, thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. If anybody wants to send in any more, do it quickly. But this really interesting question about customer expectations, your customer expectations. What you seem to have created this lovely culture at Twitter. Do your clients, are they aligned with that? Their culture's aligned with yours? What happens when there's a bit of a mismatch between what clients want from you and the culture you're trying to create?
Yeah, so I think it's I think we separate. I think we have our internal culture and how we treat our staff. We don't take any judgment on what other people do. That's their choice. And that could be born from, if you look at financial institutions, they've had years and years of extreme regulation and compliance and various other things. So we can't assume that they can run their teams the same ways as we do. So we're very sensitive to the way other people do stuff. I think what we try to do, for example, in the sales, in the revenue, we have a sales team, but we've renamed it the customers team, because what we try to do is understand what the client wants and try to service them. Now, sometimes that means being quite bold and saying, you've asked us to do, you want to do this with your brand, and actually we might not be the best platform for it. That's having that honesty. And I think being authentic and honest there builds trust. And I think we just try to, you know, care as much as we can about our customers and what they need and what they want, and just do that. But our internal thing and the external thing, I think that's two separate kind of points, internal, external.
Okay. So as we ease out of lockdown, what's your one priority for your staff?
Yeah, it's probably the same as it was going into lockdown, and I think it's just checking they're okay, you know. And I think that because easing out of lockdown's going to mean many things to many different people. You know, some people might want to run back to the office. Some people might be scared of going on the tube. Some people might have longer commutes. Some people, you know, so I think it's about trying to understand what people need and trying to cater for that whilst getting on with your work and being productive. And I think it's a very difficult thing to do, you know, because again, it's unprecedented. But just having, you know, the confidence to, you know, make decisions and listen to them, and just trying to go with what's right for them, you know. So I think it's the same as when we went into lockdown. We didn't really know, but we're just trying to over communicate, listen as much as we can, and make decisions based on that. We're just checking how they are, Zoe, really, you know, because I think some people they'll just all be in different places. I'm finding that, you know, one day you can wake up and you feel brilliant, and the next day with exactly the same conditions around you, you might feel down and you don't know why. But it's okay not to feel okay, you know. So I think that really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great way to end, and a great piece of advice for everybody to take on board for their staff and teams that they might work with. Dara, thank you so much for joining us today. You've really given us a lot to think about and some real insights into your thoughts and Twitter and how you work together. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you, and everyone.
Thank you
ever so much, everyone. Cheers.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.